Hello. And what? This isn't a Equestria War. This isn't My Little Pony. What's going on here? Oh my goodness, I think we've been transported to the wrong place. I haven't even played these games. I don't know anything about Fallout. But, welcome to my second favorite mod that is on the Steam Workshop. Hearts of Iron 4, Old World Blues. A mod that also has a lot of content, and certain nations have a lot of lore. And that's honestly one of the big things that drew me to this mod in the first place. The same thing that drew me to Equestria War in the first place. Both are extremely lore-heavy mods with interesting details. Now, as I said, I haven't played any of the Fallout games, which I know. I've watched all of My Little Pony about 3 times, maybe even more than that. But I've never played a Fallout game. If you think something's wrong with that, leave. I don't care. And if you want to watch, then stay. But I'm actually playing a submod for the Unity of Austin, which I looked in the comment section of the mod, and apparently it's got a huge amount of lore, and one person even said it was the most lore-heavy they had ever seen a country in the game, period, submod or not submod, which made me extremely curious with my interest in Hoi 4 moddings. But, to start, as tradition, let's read the leader portrait. Every man is a mutant, and every mutant is a man. Originally mutated by the Master's army when he was a youth, Keats has held a long and illustrious career with many titles to his name. It was Keats who rose to the position of Master of Supplies under the Master's army before its dissolution. And when Attis marched east to find a new promised land for mutant kind, Keats followed him as the leader of the Nightkin training squad. Keats obeyed when Attis sent him ahead of the rest of the army to purge Austin of its cannibal population. And when Attis went missing north of Laos, it was Keats who held the army in Austin together. It was Keats who broke the silence with the Texan Brotherhood to offer an olive branch after an additional period of stagnation. It was Keats who laid down the title of lieutenant in exchange for a position as Austin's mayor, and it was Keats who convinced his super mutant followers to embrace a host of more lenient policies towards humans in the area. With Austin's long stable position growing more tedious by the day, Keats prepares himself to be thrown into another mayoral term in his current unbroken victory streak, and he doesn't intend his term to be his last, if he can help it at least. For the dream of the Master's unity turned into a slightly more kind and forgiving vision than most mutants have held in the past. Austin's mayor and his friends across Texas know better than anyone else than thin the tightrope of mutant civility is, and how easy it would be to slip back into our old ways. As you can see, we are part of the Texas Economic Union. I don't play this mod as much of Equestria War, but this is actually probably in my top 5 most played mods. I've played this mod quite a bit. I don't think I've played it quite as much as Kaiserreich. I think this might be my 3rd most played mod. Kaiserreich, I very much enjoy the mod, but there's not as many events that add lore. Like, there's some interesting lore in it, don't get me wrong, especially the background to how we got there. It's super interesting, that mod, but it's not a very lore-full mod. It's just got snippets of lore throughout it that are very interesting, but it wouldn't make a good my-style video where I read all the lore of every of the nation that I play and learn a whole bunch about it and kind of get into the nation spirit. But the Attis Army remnants. One just nice bonus. But the Attis Army was a super mutant army that was one of the largest offshoots of the Master's army. Led by former general of the Master Attis, was an extremely intelligent and cunning super mutant who nearly was able to bring all of Texas under his control. However, a contingent of the Brotherhood was able to put a stop to his plans, and the army was shattered into smaller groups of war bands, all fighting for control amongst each other. Post-election obligations. Every 7 years, the Unity of Austin has an election for a position of mayor. Keats won the latest election in a landslide victory, as he always does. So beloved is he members of the army he used to lead. But in the wake of every election, there's a handful of naysayers who like to make trouble for Keats until he makes good on some campaign promises. They're usually set straight after a few months of effort, but it'll take those precious few months to make sure most of the population is wholly on the mayor's side. Sounds about right for election society. Beacon of mutant rights. Out of every settlement, both in Texas and in the surrounding region, only in Austin will you find the unique mix of humans, mutants, and ghouls all living in peaceful unity. Such a thing is precious and attractive to mutants abroad. And we find ourselves constantly joined by new arrivals seeking their own slice of paradise in our own unique city of opportunity. However, it should be noted, not everyone around us enjoys the idea of mutants living in peace among humans, and hostility towards our unity has been common enough over our history. Makes sense. Crusher's discontent. Lieutenant Crusher is one of the few remaining mutants of any significance who still holds a grudge against Keats for going native, as he puts it. He's a more cunning figure than the likes of Shale, and his own soldiers from back in Ati's day remain feverishly loyal to him. Though he has also picked up a handful of more respectable traits from Keats, rumors swirl around his own plans for the future. However, and it remains to be seen if what he learned from Keats will be enough to prevent him from bringing civil war to Austin. I mean, this ends in October. I hope that's good. Texas Economic Union. Alright. And then I suppose we should do that. Grab up my soldiers. And I'll just throw them over there for now. Keats, do you have... No, you don't. I know Equestrian War you can hover over and some of them have descriptions. I'm not 100% sure whether this mod has that as well. Also, I'm definitely going outsider. There we go. Oh yeah, I'm going full on super mutant, and we're Nightkin. Oh, Nightkin. That is interesting. I don't know if this gives bonuses to any Nightkin, though. They might be just considered mutants. I'm not sure. But I'm mostly, from the looks of it, yeah, I'm just going to want infantry and some tribal stuff. No tribal. I'll build a support. And then I'm just going to go melee. Because it just feels right for this to be melee. Oh, and I guess I'll make a convoy. And I'll set the rest to make canoes once that's finished up. Just for the future, if I get more dockyards. It'll already be set. I'm just gonna let all these be off for now. Status of our unity. The Unity of Austin runs its government on Confederation-style assembly of townships, where mayors of towns and cities hold mostly equal sway. Among the assembly, all agree that the style of government is a fair and efficient one, and most are willing to follow Keats' lead when it comes to issues of policy. But despite being consistently re-elected to the dominant position among the assembly every year since the assembly was formed, Keats himself remains unsure of which direction to take his style of leadership, and often his actions he takes on a whim ends up shaping his mindset for the future. Unity through strengths is a more expansionist ideology in the assembly, At Harvest, the ancient mutant desire for conquest uses it to change the world for a better. Some argued it is a thinly veiled excuse for the same type of militarism that brought the Great War in the first place, but Keats sees a merit in it. We currently have 0 points towards unity through strength. Unity through balance proposes justified blend of mutant strength and honest quiet, and remains most popular with the humans in our population. Most have quick to point out the lack of difference between his view and the spreading ideas of Texan nationalism, but Keats seems to think there's a difference enough to be considered. We currently have 0 points towards unity through balance. Unity through peace is a pure defensive pacifism, plain and simple. Our mutant population is obviously hesitant on the idea, and many humans think it's a more naive thing to hope for, but Keats has defended its merits in the past on the grounds of being the most kind path forward. We currently have 0 points towards unity through peace. If we ever get to the point where the ideology of the Assembly of Township is allowed to dictate our future more than circumstances do, the beliefs of the mayor will end up deciding where we go next. Yes. The unity of Austin has been at peace for a long time, too long. Though most citizens of Austin don't share the savagery of Shale's followers or the emotionless eccentric of the ironmongers, there remains many among them who see the supermutant race as one inherently destined for conquest. Crusher, another of Atti's old lieutenants, decided to throw his lot in with Keats when Shale tried to assassinate him back in 2253, but he slowly started to regret that decision. Crusher carries much weight with the other militarist aspects of the Austin unity. Whether he views Keats as worthy or not will likely affect what he does about it. Rumors swirl about a planned revolt, but nothing can be confirmed yet. I'll read these as I do them. I'll turn this off for now. Turn these off for now. Keep that there. Yep. Turn that off for now. Doop, doop. Doop, doop. Alright. Now, let's get our other things going. I want research speed. And I don't know what version we're in. I mean, we're probably not sophisticated, but are we intermediate? I don't know. Whatever. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Reborn of Unity. A grand speech. The supermutant known as Keats was reborn in the vats of Mariposa over a century ago. His tale is a strange one among mutant kind, as it rids itself of the savagery most assumed to be inherent of their species, replacing itself with a mix of empathy and cunning. No, I will not. Why? Because I'm building civilians right now, okay? So get out of my way and let me build civilians. I've already played literally just so I can get that 1,000. Wow, a grand speech. Conta straightened his tie and stepped up to the podium. The small room clapped politely, and a few mutants hollered out shouts of approval. Woo! Yeah! Yeah! Woo! Yeah! My fellow muties and most honored humies. Muties and humies, huh? That's interesting. Thank you for the welcome. He let a wide grin cross his face. It would have been intimidating if he were any other mutant wandering the wastes. But the few dozen super mutants and humans in the audience knew Keats well. Thank you for joining for today's session of Multilateral Unity. I know the Reconstruction Committee likes having special guests on to drive attendance, so when they invited me to give the annual history speech, I thought it'd be a good excuse to take a break from the mayor's office and get my thoughts together. He chuckled with the audience as he straightened his notes against the podium. I was born in 2132, he cut himself off when some of the humans raised their eyebrows or let their jaws slack. Don't give me that look, Susan. You know I'm still the strongest mutant this side of the Mississippi. Everyone laughed. As he picked up podium and bounced it on his pinky finger with the hand not holding his notes, and he never stopped smiling as he gingerly set it down again. I was born in 2132 to a caravan couple somewhere around modern-day Sac City. If the records are to be believed, I had a good childhood and my parents were good folk. They weren't the smartest, however, as they decided moving north towards where Reading is now would be a good idea in the middle of the Master's rise. You've probably heard the story somewhere else. My parents got gutted and I got thrown into a vat. I don't remember if I had a last name, but it was carried away with the goo. All things considered, it wasn't that bad. The Master is a kind man thing, and he cared for us in a way that no Hume town ever did. He paused for a second and glanced around apologetically towards the group of humans on the left side of the room. Not that it was your fault, mind you. Just attitudes at the time. The humans nodded and shrugged. Keats kept smiling. Anyway, I was one of the Master's number crunchers. Not a big job, but someone had to do it. And I liked it more than chopping up mothers and fathers anyway. I was 30 years old and happened to be out on a scavenging run when Mariposa went up in a smoke, and I was smart enough to lead to a guess what had happened. Do you know how I felt? Glad, gain infrastructure, mad, gain army, or sad, gain civilian. Where do I gain this? In Austin, the main spot. I think I'm actually going to get infrastructure, just because that'll let me build stuff there faster. Austin's rebirth. In 2208, General Atiz was slain at the hands of Rhombus and a small brotherhood detachment somewhere in Vicinity of Los. His remains haven't been found to this day, but lacking leaderships, the mutants of Austin look to Keats for guidance. Why am I not getting political power? It says I should be getting one. Strange. Oh, I'm getting one when I'm not having a national focus, which means I'm getting exactly 0 normally. I see. That makes sense. Remembrance of the Forgotten. The crowd murmured in agreement. Agree, yeah. As Keats put on a face flushed with passion. But that didn't stop me, he declared after a pause. It didn't stop us. He let his face relax again. And his ever-present smile returned. General Atiz declared he would avenge the Master and set off on a crusade to do so. I followed him, as did so many of our kind. Show of hands. Who here signed on with Addis in the beginning? He waited as a few super mutants in the back raised their hands. They were the ones with the most scars, of course, and Keats saluted them for it. Those were rough days. We marched through biting winters and blazing summers without end. During the army's migration, I was tasked with setting straight the few nightkin we had with us, and those nightkin saved Atiz's life on more than one occasion. Impressed, he promoted me to a lieutenant and gave me a job. While he was busy searching for whatever it was he was so determined to find back in Lost, he needed me to go ahead and secure Austin for our army. A few thousand muties were assigned to me, as were every nightkin in the army, and we set off for Austin. We were expecting to find a ruined city. What we found was a scene from double L hockey, HE double hockey sticks. That's the thing. He frowned for the first time, and the surprise on the audience's faces made it clear they'd never seen him frown before, or at least they hadn't seen such a thing in a very, very long time. Only one skyscraper was left standing. Not a single building was left whole. And worst of all, filthy cannibals roamed the streets everywhere, casually murdering any who breathed. His mouth curved back into a smile. The least they could have done was save some for us. The mutants laughed uproariously. The humans at least grinned. By the end of the month, there wasn't a cannibal left alive who hadn't fled or reprinted, and we set about burning the bodies instead of eating them. But at the time, we'd cleaned up the place enough to start working the slaves. We had heard the news that Atiz had disappeared. We waited a few nervous months, and when the only folks that came into Austin told us they didn't know about Atiz either, we declared him dead. After a bit of bickering with the mole rat, Shale, the rest of the lieutenants decided to make me mayor. Keats raised both arms in triumph, double V's extended for good measures. "And here I am today," he roared. The crowd laughed a bit before Keats slams his arm back down to the podium and squeezed its edges so hard the word cracked. But how could I forget? When a cheese was declared dead, do you remember how we reacted? That day is seared into my brain, just as it is any mutee who was there. We gave him grand funeral. We set off a nuke in his honor. We partied until we ran out of food. What the? I'm just gonna say we gave him a grand funeral. I don't feel like setting a nuke or eating till we starve. In 2253, a madman named Miles Rees traveled through Texas on his way to try to end the world. He was stopped in the end, of course, but as he waltzed through the countryside, he left a trail of mutations and oddities behind him. Most common of all those specimens were huge carnivorous plants, those blasted plants. The issue of the plants. Ah, that was one of the brightest nights of my life. Beautiful. Keats glanced at the ceiling and shook his head, chuckling. After we cleaned up the mess from that celebration, we got back to work. Austin streets were cleaned so we could drive out our trucks through without bumping on corpses at every turn. A wall was built around the city to keep raiders out unchecked, and we started patching up the building so we could store guns and Hummies in there without them freezing to death or finding their way out. Another round of chuckles. Eventually, though, I started to feel a bit guilty. 2 decades into repairing Austin, we hadn't attacked anyone except for more raiders who were a nuisance anyways. I got to thinking, were we really an army anymore? Most of the crowd shook their heads back and forth. Most seemed happy. Crusher, one of the old veterans, then back grimaced. And we decided we weren't. We were something new. After a vote was held, we decided to allow non-military mutees to do whatever, and we gave our new state a name, the Unity of Austin. Keats nodded slightly for a moment before continuing. 30-ish years after we founded our new unity, something new happened. Austin was a bustling city by then, and we were beginning to test out that muties and humies alike policy. Does the name Miles Rees mean anything to any of you? Keats looked around and the audience groans. Guess you do. He came down from up north with some horrible pre-war tech and spread those mutated plants everywhere. Luckily, Reese was killed by Scarlet, that girl who came down and saved us all. I wonder how she's doing these days. Keats looked through the west window for a moment. Anyways, Reese got what he had coming, and Scarlet's the sitting warden of that mess on our west border. But what about all the weird plants that got left in our homes? Reese got what he had. Scarlet's? Oh. Yeah. There you are, Scarlet. That's cool. Sitting warden on the mess on our west border. But what about all the weird plants that got left in our land? Some Humie merchant came through one day selling them, and one of them must have gotten loose because by the end of the year, they were everywhere, snapping at our heels. Remember what we did with them in the end? We tamed them, militarized them. We torched them, taking them back home. We sold them to the highest bidder. So we could sell them to the Texans Arms Association. We could tame and militarize them, or we can torch them. I'm going to say let's tame and militarize them. I'm not sure if I'm going to use these plants, but they sound cool. They do have some fairly nice buffs. I might use them, might not. We'll have to see. But might as well have them, just in case I feel like it's necessary to use them. That be Shale. Shale is the thorn in Keats' side, a former lieutenant in the Atees army. He was a fanatic follower of Atees and wholesale adopted his vision for a whole world under super mutant rule. Throughout the 23rd century, he has repeatedly threatened Keats and his vision for a pluralistic society and will have to be dealt with eventually. Shale's betrayal. Once we got the plants off the streets, a lot of the problems went away, Keats continues. Children played in the streets of Austin for the first time since the war. The average citizen no longer considered themselves merely members of the army, but citizens of a nation. And there was unity, of course. I'm ignoring the one UT that almost tore everything to pieces. That be Shale. He paused for dramatic effect. Everyone's faces were serious except for Crusher and the old veterans on the back. They chuckled to themselves a bit, but kept respectfully quite quiet despite it all. Allow me to set the stage. Our good friend Scarlet came down from the up north to stop the madman Reese. On her way, she stopped here and helped clear a great number of monstrous plants from the power station across town, and people loved her. She came back here after saving the Brotherhood in San Antonio and decided to spend the day relaxing by attending a speech I was giving. Do you remember? Keats scanned the room for those with memories long enough to clearly remember the events of 22 years prior. Most showed some signs of appreciation or recognition. It was my birthday, Keats recalled fondly. I had prepared a speech unlike any I had previously given. A speech calling for equal rights for humies and mutants alike. A speech the crowd supported, a speech made as a parting gift for Scarlet. He smiled wider, somehow. Then his face turned neutral. It was a speech interrupted by a hail of bullets, if you can recall. Shale, that warmonger of a dishonor to the master, decided that all the unity we had achieved was worse than the futile slaughter of our bygone past. Keats closed his eyes and exhaled, making sure his grip on the podium didn't completely splinter its structure. Crusher and the veterans seemed to be chuckling to themselves again, while most others in the room had their heads lowered or were looking at various walls or floors absent-mindedly. But despite the bullets I survived, despite the roaring anger, I was pulled away by a friend. What did the crowd respond by doing? We blamed Scarlet and ran her out of town. Quick to assume. +5 attack, -10 stability. We blamed Shale and ran him out of town. Guarded beliefs. Or they blamed you for being such big target. The bloodied mayor. -10 stability and -10 war support. I'm actually gonna go with the bloodied mayor. I like that division organization, and I'll tank the stability and war support loss. But I think we'll choose our direction and continue on in the next episode. Get used to it. We don't go very far through in the series I do. If you're new here because of this series, that's just how I kind of play. I take things slow, read everything out. We have a good time here, learning everything about Nation, learning all their lore. But if you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, and if you want to see more, hit the bell button. And as always, peace. That's kind of my outro thing that I do in all my series is I declare peace for everyone because it's, just kind of a nice thing to do for your newbies. But anyways, yeah. As always, peace.